Hey, this is Scott Osgood with XRAY FM. I'm very pleased to be joined by Ryan Peck, one of the founders and now the board treasurer of BAMP, which is the Boise
All Ages Movement Project, yeah.
My guy.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. I would love for you to kind of unpack BAMP a little bit. I understand you're also involved with the Boise Rock School.
Yes.
And all things good here in Boise.
Well, I don't work at the donut shop or any
not
ice
yet.
cream stores, but yeah. Yeah, so BAMP, it's basically, we're a lot of us are friends here in Boise. So Eric Gilbert, he's like festival director at Treefort, good friend.
Sweet man.
Sweet man, very sweet man. Gives out a lot of good hugs.
He's friends with everyone here. And if he's not friends with you, you just haven't met him yet.
And Nathan Walker, and a bunch of us, Stephanie Coyle. We were getting together trying to just solve the problem of like, how do you build a great youth culture, right? And the thing you have to have is hubs. You have to have cultural hubs where kids of similar passions can meet and exchange powerful ideas and nurture themselves. And for us, it's music. The skate park over there, it's a hub for skateboarders. We love it. But for us, we're all interested in music, so we were trying to figure out how can we get an all-ages space that's inclusive, that is kid-run, youth-run, in Boise, because we don't have one, crazily enough. There's places, there's like a knitting factory and stuff like that, but they're not, the ownership isn't there of the youth. Like, they're just places where it's like, well, you guys can come too, I guess, but don't get in the way, right? And so we're trying to figure that out, and Rock School fits in because we have hundreds of kids that come to our after-school program doing music education, and as these kids grow up, we watch them grow up, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you don't really need to be here anymore, but there's not as much stuff for you out there. How can we develop an environment where you guys can do your thing and feel supported and feel, like you belong here? Like, how can we nourish this? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and I think it's a challenge that most cities contest with, providing space for this, providing a nurturing environment. And I'm curious if with the success of what you've already done with BAMP, to folks who are maybe listening outside of Boise, outside of Portland, who are interested in setting up a similar infrastructure or just an all ages inclusive space, what were some of the challenges you initially faced, and do you have any advice for the best way to overcome such?
Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there.
Loaded question.
Challenges are a lot, but for us it was like, well, initially we were kind of like approaching the city and being like, this is kind of a city issue. Like, is there a way that we can craft some initiatives that would have more city involvement and would have more like, sort of top-down involvement? And we had some support there, but eventually, Eric and I, Nathan and Steph, we're like, we just need to make our own nonprofit, and we'll just tackle it ourselves and raise the money, and eventually, and that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to raise the money to buy a permanent venue that will be the permanent, all ages space. But I think. So
you're in a situation of leasing right now, then?
Well, Rock School leases a space, and then BAMP is doing kind of pop-up shows everywhere, kind of similar to Friends of Noise. Like, we do a lot of pop-up shows and a lot of partner stuff.
Shout out Friends of Noise.
What's up, Andre?
We see you out there, Andre. We hear you, at least.
Yeah. No, we do a lot of pop-ups, and we've kind of done the thing with BAMP. We say both, where we've there'll be as an example, there was this taco place that was transitioning ownership, and there was this 6-month gap where the building owner knew he didn't really have a tenant there, and it was kind of a little different. And he was like, you guys can just have this space for this period of time. And so we had this 6-month pop-up where we just did show after show there.
Live shows at the taqueria.
The taqueria, yeah. Now it's
beautiful.
It's called Diablo and Sons now. But really, I think to unpack that a little bit more, for us, from the education background, when I look at these problems, I see them also in just like huge economic engines. And so when you think about when you think about a kid playing music, right? Your first instinct is like, oh, that's cool, they're learning music. But when you really unpack what's happening there, you're like, okay, you're trying to learn a song and you're failing at it. You're like, I'm terrible at this. Why am I playing guitar? I'm so bad at this. And weeks go by and you're like, well, it's sounding a little better. And more weeks go by. I don't know, it's okay. But eventually you're like a musician. You're playing stuff, you're playing songs you like, you're writing songs you like, hopefully. And you've done this kind of fail, succeed thing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that, right, to me, is that's the thing that makes great creative entrepreneurs. So if you're thinking about a city and you're thinking about how do we make this community better,
It's not just about the music.
you build creative entrepreneurs. You don't want to have a thing where you're like Portland or whatever, where you just have people coming in, like housing prices are crazy, and you're like, yeah, I don't know, it's basically like a lot of service industry. Like we have a lot of bartenders, and we have a lot of like, you want to have people coming in and being like, I have this great idea, I really want to try it, and they have the wherewithal within them to be like, yeah, I have the confidence I can maybe pull this off because I've had this thing that I've learned where I was fail, succeed. I played some venues, I played in front of my friends, and yeah, I failed there, but then I had some really good gigs. Like you're building creative entrepreneurship. And so that's like, that's
building life skills, yeah.
Yeah, that's the economic engine you want in a city. You don't want to have a city where it's like, I don't know, no offense to anyone, but I call it like the gray hair tsunami, where you have like retirees that show up and they're able to buy houses and they want to live there because it's a great city, but ultimately they're demanding a different type of ecosystem economically that you want.
Sure, and maybe they're not participating in said ecosystem. They are, aside from monetarily.
Yeah.
You need a system that also has volunteers and people who are interacting and creating. And yeah, no, I very much understand what you're saying.
So we're trying to build a hub. Like the hubs are where big ideas are exchanged, and it's like, you guys are in Boise, right? You see all like these Patagonia puffer jackets, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's wearing Patagonia. But it's like, you think about that guy, Yvon Chouinard. Patagonia was grown out of a hub. He was at this base camp in Yosemite, and he had a place where he was like, I don't know, yeah, we should start making pitons to climb with. And he learned a blacksmith, and he probably failed at being a blacksmith for a while, but then he got good at it.
Sure.
And he grew one of the coolest companies in the world out of that. So we want to create that hub where kids can exchange ideas, they have the confidence to do it, and economically you're making your city a better place to live. I hope I unpacked it well enough to use the term.
Absolutely, my guy. That's fabulous. And,
yeah.
and I think that's great advice to folks who are perhaps tuning in from outside of Boise, outside of Portland, perhaps looking at this as a larger item than just, it's not about music.
Yeah.
Or even solely about creative expression. It's about empowering youth to become successful adults.
Yeah.
And hopefully in a creative fashion as well.
Creativity's high.
Yeah. No, I think that's a super, that's a great takeaway and a great way to look at what you guys are doing. But I, for one...
Gray hair tsunami, I meant no offense by that, but you understand what I'm saying. I maybe said it in a little bit insensitive way, but my parents just moved to Boise too, so
You're part of the problem. We get it. But no, I am very excited about what you're doing in a music realm.
Yeah.
I grew up in Los Angeles. There's a lot of spaces in which you can see live music as a youth. And then I went to school in Seattle where there's not. Outside of the Vera Project, bless their hearts,
Love the Vera
there's
Project.
not a lot of live music. And so when I was living in Seattle, I actually would drive down to Portland often to go to all-ages venues to see the artists that would be touring in Seattle but would be playing at a 21 and up show.
While you were under 21.
Correct.
Got it.
So, which brings me to this question for you here. What is the availability for the youth in Boise, Idaho, to see live music? Are there separate spaces, or is it rather inclusive?
So there's no dedicated all-ages space, and that's the biggest problem for us. There's no like main hub where
so
it's
as soon
like.
as you can lock down the taqueria, though.
No, we're thinking bigger. I mean,
Okay.
we're entering into a capital campaign that'll be bigger than that. So we're looking at like, bigger venue, not big, not like 1,000-person venue, but Vera Project's a great thing to think about where we're headed.
A good example.
And it'll be nonprofit owned, so the legacy's there. It's like it's not tied to me or Gilbert or Nathan. I mean, it is. We're getting it started, but eventually it's its
There'll
own
be an oil
thing.
painting of you guys as the forefathers hanging above.
Sort of a presidential thing. It's
Yeah,
like, who's
people will
that
get
guy?
it. Yeah, huh. He definitely came from Boise.
No, you want it to be a legacy thing, and it's Boise does it. I mean, Boise has like a knitting factory, and it's got some places which are great, but also for us, I mean, what happens is this shift where when the alcohol laws get so intertwined with this, you send this weird message, I think, to really impressionable kids where they're like, oh, I get it. Like, music is a bar culture. And it's like, no, music is culture. Like,
Totally.
You know what I mean? So you want to be able to, like, tease that out a little bit and say, well, yeah, I mean, if you're over 21, definitely enjoy a beer if that's what you're into, but it's not a bar culture. It's a culture.
Or a requirement.
No, it's an arts and cultural experience, and it stands on its own. I mean, the power of a band, the power of live music is a freaking religion, It's like...
It's one that I ascribe to.
It's amazing. And so you
Or
want to
subscribe
have
to.
that, be able to stand on its own 2 feet. So we do have these places where kids can go, but, like Knitting Factory is awesome, but when kids go there, it's like they're trying to look over someone's head and they can't see the show, and it's like everyone's slamming beers, and they're just like, I don't know. So when you don't have that sort of like that spot you can go to, like the Veer Project.
Right, the hub.
The hub. Veer Project's a great example, and they've done so much cool work in Seattle.
So speaking of Veer Project, not only do they do music, they have silk screening, screen printing classes for the youth.
Yeah.
They have a few other. I think they have classes on recording audio.
Yep.
They also allow the youth to run the soundboards for select shows.
Yep.
BAMP, Boise All Ages Movement, not music.
Yeah.
Do you guys incorporate other arts outside of music?
Yeah, so all the kids that are running the BAMP venue, they are part of the U21 project of Treefort, which is kind of like intertwined with us, where there's mentorship. So there's kids that can work with Nathan and work with Eric and work with us and learn these skills. So eventually, like our venue, when it's permanent, there'll be all these mentorship opportunities where you're like, hey, yeah, maybe you don't want to play here, but maybe you want to help us make some posters for some shows. Maybe you don't want to make posters, but maybe you want to learn the business aspect of booking and actually making the show work.
You're creating an ecosystem.
Fiscally. So you're learning those entrepreneurial skills in a real way, And ideally we'll have like a hospitality component where there's like a little coffee shop or something, and it's like,
very cool.
Okay, this, you guys, this team of, I'm saying youth, I guess I mean like 13 to 24-year-olds would be like our demo.
Sure.
But it's like, hey, you guys are like this next 6 months, you guys are like being mentored on how to run this coffee shop, So there's more that grows out of it, and then the Rock School classroom component's right there as well.
Sure.
And then we already do recording, and we already do, songwriting and all that stuff. So it does. I mean, it's music focused, but theater will be there, and dance will be there, and all these things. LED. I don't know if you guys met LED, but they do dance, and they'll definitely be able to have classes there and performances there. And
cool. No, we'll have to check them out. How long has BAMP been an entity?
Like IRS recognized, like 3 years, something like that.
3 years. Okay, so in 3 years you've accomplished a lot. What would you like to see BAMP do in the next year?
Acquire a building. Yeah, and we're moving head steam towards that. So, we're kind of in the silent capital campaign phase now, and we've done a lot of stuff. We did the wind meetings out in Tacoma, where we met Andre and a lot of these guys from the Veer Project and different organizations. We got a grant there, and we've got some financial support already started. Now we're starting to hit up larger foundations, larger organizations where it's like, hey, make the pitch, and hopefully they want to be a part of it and be helping the future of not only Boise, but it's a paradigm shift, I think, of thinking just in terms of our world, like, hey, we need to value youth a little bit differently and a little bit better. So yeah, I say a year from now, I hope we have our building purchased, and then hopefully it's operating for the next Treefort. That's pretty steep, but
it's not unimaginable.
I start shuffling my feet. I'm like, it's pretty soon, but.
All right, folks, so get ready. Treefort 2020, we're going to see the Boise All Ages Music Stage at their own separate space.
Yeah.
Owned
by the
BAMP,
nonprofit. Yeah. Yeah.
And operated by the youth.
Yeah, and Rock School and BAMP are very, so you might see like the Rock School logo and the BAMP logo and it's all community.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Ryan Preck, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all you've done for Boise, and hopefully for folks beyond Boise. Hopefully some folks tuning in are inspired by what you're doing. I think they ought to be. It's a noble mission, and I believe in the cultural shift.
I love it.